Reimagining Success, episode 254. You're listening to the Reimagining Success podcast, where we help you design a business and a life that allows you freedom from the 9 to 5. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, ex-corporate good girl, now a business mentor and coach, author, mum of 2, and I'm here to help you create more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Now let's get started with redefining success outside of the 9 to 5. Hello, we are into September, and that means, at least here in the UK and here in my life, we're back from summer holidays, back to school, and for me, for the first time in, how old am I? Many years, we actually are back to school because my daughter Sophia is starting school, so it'll be lots of settling in over the next few weeks. We've got an hour here, a morning there, and then we'll start by the end of the month, so it's a little bit mixed in terms of having time for work this month, but I do have that sense of back to school, all the new school shoes and uniform and labels, and no stationery, unfortunately. I think they get that at school, so I didn't get to buy all the pretty pens and paper for her, although I do for myself. And for you, maybe, like me, this time of year, certainly in the Northern Hemisphere, when we've just come back from summer and we sort of get back into the school, back to school mindset in September, tends to be almost more powerful than is it the Georgian calendar that starts in January? That sort of artificial, sort of after Christmas, I've eaten too much and I've got to start work. This January especially, I was a bit slow getting going. Whereas September, I feel like, okay, back to school mindset, back into work and so on. So with that in mind, we're shifting gears a little bit. Been looking at personal branding over the summer. Maybe you haven't been listening. If you haven't, then do please have a listen if that's of interest to you in terms of your personal brand really being your new CV these days, how you can grow your impact with that personal brand. So in the coming weeks, we'll be looking at what I want to call thinking like an entrepreneur. And I'm hoping this will be relevant to you, whether you're considering starting your business, you're already in a business, because there are lots of mindset shifts that are required at different levels, both when you're starting out and when you're more experienced. You know, I left my job 10 years ago, so there are definitely continued shifts happening for me. And also, if you're in a job and you think of yourself a little bit as a would-be, or I'm going to tell you, you should think of yourself a little bit as a would-be intrapreneur, so I-N-T-R-A, intrapreneur, as sort of an internal entrepreneur. And before I even get into this, today I want to talk about one of the traits. In fact, I'll introduce all of them, which will tie me to these topics, but hopefully will be flexible and adaptable even within that framework that I'm providing. But I really want to caveat all this with, I'm a bit tentative, sensitive, resistant, reluctant, what's the word I'm looking for, to use the word entrepreneur. With my clients, and certainly myself, I tend to prefer sort of solopreneur, or which even that's a bit, it's a bit limiting, or, expert, self-employed, however you want to define yourself, freelancer and so on, right? It's so hard to find the right term. I don't think I, and perhaps nor you, feel or sort of aspire to sometimes, or at least resonate with the idea of being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneur is this kind of magical unicorn born with this risk-taking spirit, and from what we see on LinkedIn and all these memes and things, it's getting up at 5 a.m, hustling all the time, taking risks and all this crazy stuff. And I don't think that's accurate, first of all, but that's another story. It certainly hasn't been my experience. So I think one of the I can't find the words today. What's happened over the mushy summer? My brain has gone to mush. One of the misconceptions about having your own business and taking risk is that it is a real risky business. And there's a difference between risk and uncertainty. Yes, there's risk, but it's a calculated risk that we're taking in, let's face it, a world of uncertainty. But we're not just willy-nilly throwing money at stuff. We're using our intuition, we're making sound decisions, perhaps with less clarity, certainty than we would within a more stable corporate environment. But again, the world is pretty volatile now. Things change. The last few years we've experienced crazy things. We will continue to do so. But we're not, and I put ourselves into a community here, those of us who, whatever we want to call ourselves, and who work for ourselves, are not in this crazy unicorn, risk-taking, whatever. I don't know, the sort of Richard Branson, Elon Musk thing is not quite where I see myself. And yet, there are certain things that I've had to shift in my mindset, in how I behave, And I think they're powerful shifts that would serve you, whether you're, again, planning on being in a corporate organization the rest of your life, you're considering leaving, or you've already left. And so the themes I want to cover, and I will, please do allow me some flexibility if I change my mind. But the first one today is self-awareness. Self-awareness. We're going to talk about intrinsic motivation rather than the external rewards and recognition. I talk about the good girl syndrome and people pleasing and so on. So we'll talk about intrinsic motivation. We'll talk about courage. If you've followed me for any length of time, you know I'm a fan of growth over comfort. We'll talk about adaptability. Adaptability is so important in a world of change. Growth mindset, which I've talked about as well, coming from Carol Dweck's book, Mindset. She's got a TED talk as well about the growth versus fixed mindset, lifelong learning, all that jazz. Accountability sounds not so sexy, but super important, sort of ownership, taking responsibility. And then finally, resilience, super important as well. So those are the key traits I want to look at in the coming weeks. So again, I hope this will be relevant for you in whatever walk of life you find yourself. And today I want to talk about self-awareness, which certainly, definitely should be an interesting topic and an important one for all of us. So the thing about self-awareness is that, we're very good at judging other people. I'd say, they really have no clue. I've certainly got some people in my immediate sphere where I think, how can they not be, embarrassed by that? How can they not tell that this is inappropriate? Or, and it's very easy to judge other people. And yet it's very hard to see ourselves. We kind of want that magic mirror. And in fact, that's why it's quite valuable. One of the many reasons to work with someone like a coach or a therapist, depending on the things you're working on, or a friend, in fact, someone holds a mirror up and is able to reflect back, and you can really do some deep thinking and reflection on, hang on a second, what was the mistake I made there? Or, can I take ownership of something I did, and so on. But it's actually quite hard, but it's a problem. And having a sound self-awareness, understanding of who we are, what makes us tick, is so critical, certainly to running our own business, to developing any kind of career, and to having relationships personally, and taking care of our kids and whatever else, right? So it's so crucial. If we don't have that self-awareness, without a clear understanding of your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, that's a really important exercise that I think we should all do. You can easily make decisions that aren't aligned with your true capabilities and passions, right? And if you're in a corporate organization, you might find yourself taking on projects that don't fully leverage your talents, or you might get really frustrated in roles where, this is, I'm having to do something that I just don't enjoy doing. It's not your zone of excellence, let alone your zone of genius. Lack of self-awareness, and I'm thinking personal relationships, but also work, again, whether you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, however you want to identify yourself, can really get in the way of communicating with other people as well, right? Because if I don't know, let's come back to the topic of personal branding. If I don't know what I stand for, what's my value proposition, it's very hard for me to sell myself, to build that personal brand externally, because if I don't know what my value is, how on earth am I going to communicate that to other people? And likewise, working in a team, if you're not aware of your own communication style, the impact of how you behave and so on, then you won't really be able to collaborate very effectively with clients, with colleagues, with peers and partners and so on. And if you don't have self-awareness, this is a bit harsh maybe, but we're going to stagnate. We're going to, I want to say, sort of resign ourselves to mediocrity. There's certainly not going to be that growth that's so important to me. If I can't tell that, this is really an area I should be improving, or understanding even in my product offering, right, in my business, I'm not actually adding the value there, that, it's not worth the price that people are paying, or I'm not showing up fully for my clients right now, for my team, I might be ignoring my true passions, and I'm just kind of settling for whatever I happen to be doing now. And that's a massive missed opportunity. So I hope you can see, and I hope you agree, that self-awareness is so important for making aligned decisions, for communicating with other people, for communicating your value proposition, and for growing and developing and building a business, career, life that really suits you, that allows you to come alive, that allows you to fulfill your full potential. If you don't know what that potential is, then how on earth can we, build that into reality? On the other hand, if you have really strong self-awareness, then you can better understand also your clients' needs. You can build deeper and more meaningful relationships. You can foster more positive interactions, with colleagues. You can boost your team morale and productivity and so on, right? So super important relationships. And again, I'm trying to stick to the professional sphere, but we can understand that this has a ripple effect also with personal relationships, romantic and otherwise. If you're self-aware, you can really leverage your strengths to maybe solve challenges in a more creative way, to bring in support and partner with other people who can help you where perhaps you have blind spots, and really drive change within your business, within your team, within the organization. And finally, having that self-awareness breeds confidence, and that translates to trust, right? From clients, from colleagues, again, from friends and peers and whoever you're interacting with. If you're really understanding your value and who you are, as much as when we're younger, certainly, and lack confidence, we I wanted to be the cool girl, and I, wanted to pretend that I liked this music and so on. And we think that's what people want, but actually we respect people so much more if they are clearly and confidently being themselves. And maybe we disagree with them, maybe, there's something we don't like, but it's still, you respect that. I certainly respect that self-awareness and knowledge and conviction with which they make decisions, right? And that's really attractive, actually. That's very aspirational, I think, and admirable. And I think that gives us more trust and stability and respect than if someone is sort of a bit of a slippery eel and they're constantly chopping and changing. You don't really know where you have them, and that can be quite uncomfortable, quite discombobulating. That's a good word. So you're a much more trustworthy leader in your field. Even if you're showing up, and we'll talk about authenticity in a moment, if you're showing up authentically online in your social media and so on, that breeds trust. For me, I'm like, okay, every time she shows up, she's doing that through a lens of whatever it is, that big theme, that sort of lens is for you, right? To really align your content with who you are and what you stand for. That builds trust, and the consistency really builds a coherent idea of who you are in my eyes. And as I said, the final piece, so we talked about the challenges that happen when you don't have self-awareness, the impact when you do. Authenticity is a word that's thrown out around a lot, but I think we do want to be authentic. Certainly it was one of the values I came up with as I left my corporate job 10 years ago. And being myself, it's a tough one, right? I don't even know how to define that word, but I think it's what we all dream of, to be ourselves and be loved for who we are. And I do think also that's the cornerstone of success, professionally and otherwise. So if I am self-aware and know who I am, what I stand for, and I can really embrace that, if I can embrace my true self, I have a profound understanding of my strengths, my passions, my values, I can then, again, develop that business, design a life that is completely aligned to who I am and who I want to be. And likewise, if you're in an internal organization, leader, for a team and so on, but you can really make a more impactful contribution and align your journey with who you are, and not sort of copy what other people are doing or end up in a place or a role that sort of you felt you should do, but just doesn't fit. When we build a brand, business brand, personal brand, again, we have to know who we are, and then the business becomes an extension of that. By definition, as a solopreneur who's passionate about the work we do, we're pretty inextricably linked, although there is a boundary there, but we are very much intertwined with the business that we're building. And likewise, to be honest, especially when you're at a more senior level in an organization, you become very closely aligned with, your identity is very much attached to, coherent, cohesive with, hopefully, the role you play in your organization, in your career. And so if you want to have an authentic leadership role and be that leader for your team, for your industry and so on, then that starts with that self-awareness to represent yourself in a true way. And I think that's very admirable, again, is the word I'm thinking, and aspirational for other people, for more junior people in your organization. And finally, we talked a little bit about, misaligned decision-making that comes when you don't have the self-awareness. You can really leverage your self-awareness to make the best decisions for you and for your team, for your business, for your family, and so on. If you really truly understand your motivations and aspirations, then you can, navigate the choices that align with that path for you. So you can again, whether you're doing that for your family, for your team, for the company where you work, if it's your own company, if you're a senior leader in an organization, you can align the decisions you're making with what's true to you, as well as hopefully with the company's values and objectives. So that's what I have for you on self-awareness today. I'd love to hear from you. How self-aware do you feel? Have you done work with a coach or someone to really understand? One of the first exercises I did with a coach was understanding my values. I am, it can feel a bit like navel gazing. And to be honest, when life gets busy, and as it has done for me over a period of some time, but I do try to come back to it. But when life gets busy, it does feel a bit self-indulgent to sort of do this kind of work on, what is my true self and so on. But for all that kind of lightness that I'm approaching the topic, I think is so crucial. If you don't know what you want, if you don't know who you are and what you stand for, how are people around you going to understand who you are and what you stand for? How are you going to get what you want? How are you going to be able to make decisions? I often say there is no right decision, but the right decision is the one that's right for you. And if you don't know what that is, that's very disorienting and can lead to all sorts of trouble for you further down the line. So I hope that's an important reminder of the importance of understanding who you are, what matters to you, what you stand for. Again, whatever your role or where you are in the journey of personal branding, or building a business, or being a senior leader in an organization, this self-awareness is so important as an entrepreneur, and as I said, as someone internally as well, and in fact anybody at all. So I hope you agree with me. I hope you found that interesting. And next week we will look at another trait of thinking like an entrepreneur, which is intrinsic motivation. I did write an article about that some time ago on LinkedIn, but I think it's an important one, so we'll look at that one next week. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you then. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Reimagining Success with Anna Lundberg. Before you go, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. I'll be back next week. I'll see you then.